Friends, hi, namaste, and a very warm welcome. Like the stories of all the other decades, the swinging 60s has also many stories, and after finishing India, let us go through the story of the rest of the world. So while you sit back and relax, let me quickly go to the United States of America. In the 1960 presidential election, the youthful Democratic candidate John F. Kennedy won and he became the US President in 1961. Kennedy comes from a family of traditional Democrats and he was very keen to make social changes, and also he is a staunch anti-communist. But during his tenure, the Cold War between the Soviet Union and the United States have heightened. That is because at that time the Soviet Union was trying to establish themselves as a superpower in the world. The failed Bay of Pigs incident in the year 1961 is one such incident. This is an operation where a group of Cuban dissidents landed in southern Cuba in the beachhead in the Bay of Pigs. The entire operation was bankrolled by the CIA with the approval of John Kennedy. But the Cuban regime of Fidel Castro, which was Soviet backed, was able to defeat this particular contingent within 3 days. The Bay of Pigs incident is always referred as a failed American foreign policy. In November 1963, in the third year of John Kennedy's tenure, the world was shocked to hear that on 22nd November, President Kennedy is shot dead while he is touring Dallas in Texas. The killer Lee Harvey Oswald is an ex-US Marine and he is arrested within 1.5 hours of the killing and is lodged in the police custody in Dallas. But on the night of 24th November, when he was being shifted from the police headquarters for further questioning, Jack Ruby, a Dallas nightclub operator, walked into the police station and fatally shot Oswald. Oswald later dies. Though Jack Ruby stood trial and was convicted and he died in 1967, till date there is a bit of a mystery shrouded on how he was able to enter the police headquarters and kill Lee Harvey Oswald. After the death of John Kennedy, Vice President Lyndon Johnson automatically became the US President, and in 1964 he was instrumental in passing one of the most important legislations in the history of the USA. This is the Civil Rights Act, which was passed in that year. The African Americans, though freed from slavery, was facing segregation and were not able to exercise their civil rights for nearly 100 years. But as the decades passed, the movement for gaining the civil rights by the African Americans gained momentum, and in the 1950s and 1960s they had a strong leader in Martin Luther King Jr. The bill was put up in the Congress in 1963 by John Kennedy himself, but after his death, Lyndon Johnson ensured the smooth passage of the bill under the guidance of Robert F. Kennedy, US Senator and younger brother of John Kennedy. Johnson won the 1964 presidential election, and in 1965 another bill was passed, the Voting Rights Bill, which gave equal voting rights to all US citizens. In 1968, the world was again shocked when Martin Luther King Jr. and Robert F. Kennedy were assassinated within 2 months. The first killing happened in April and the second killing happened in June. Ultimately, in 1969, a piece of good news comes when US space flight Apollo 11 lands on the moon and astronauts Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin are the first two human beings to ever walk on the moon. Apart from the major events, the 1960s see anti-Vietnam movement all over US in major part of the decade. This is particularly so in the universities where the students agitate strongly against the Vietnam War. From US, let us now travel to Europe. We come to Germany. Germany in 1960s is a divided country, and the East Germans are with the Soviet bloc, while the West Germans are with the capitalist bloc. Berlin is a divided city. In 1961, the East Germans construct the Berlin Wall. The purpose of this wall is to stop the East German citizens from fleeing to the West. This wall remains for the next 3 decades. In 1963, Konrad Adenauer, the West German Chancellor and the architect of modern West Germany, steps down from the chancellorship and leading the country from 1949 onwards. The 1960s see the formation of left governments in many of the European countries. Italy gets its first center of left government in 1962. This is a coalition of the Democrats and the Republicans, and the Socialists also joined the government in 1963, and Aldo Moro becomes the Prime Minister of Italy. In 1964, Labour Party wins the election and comes back to power after a gap of nearly 10 years under Prime Minister Harold Wilson, and they remain in power for the rest of the decade. 1968 sees a period of liberalization in reforms in Czechoslovakia under the reformist Alexander Dubček. But the Soviets are quick to stop this movement by sending tanks and military in Prague, the capital of Czechoslovakia. Moving on to Asia, 1966 sees the Chinese Cultural Revolution. This revolution is started by Mao Zedong. He feels that the Communist Party and the Chinese society is infiltrated by the bourgeois and capitalists who want to take China back to the path of capitalism. This is a period of great political and social upheaval. The Cultural Revolution officially continues up to 1969. In 1967, Arab and Israelis fight a 6-day war, and Israel decisively defeats Egypt and Syria. The tension between the two groups, which continues till date, heightens by this 6-day war. By the 1960s, the legendary revolutionary Ernesto Che Guevara of Argentina makes a name for himself and is the face of the new left. He is assassinated by CIA and the Bolivian army while he is leading a revolution in Bolivia in South America. The story of the 1960s is incomplete with the rise of the Beatles. Beatles is an English rock band formed in Liverpool in 1960. Its four members, John Lennon, Paul McCartney, Ringo Starr and George Harrison, become celebrities overnight. And in the 10 years the group is together, they reach the height of popularity and create a music mania particularly in the USA. As the 60s draw to an end, 32 African colonies of France and Britain gained their independence, and by the end of the 1960s only 3 or 4 colonies mainly belonging to the Portuguese remain in Africa. With the decade drawing to an end, time now for me to also close today's program. Before closing, let me ask you the what if question. If the Beatles had continued, what would have been their popularity? Viewers, please think over. See you next time. Bye, namaste and thanks.